Amanda McBroom. I am here talking today with the fabulous Rabbi Sol Solomon on Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Oh, shalom, shalom, my friends. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And, sure. Are you hearing voices? Because I'm hearing voices. I am hearing a new CD called Voices by our guest in the neighborhood. Her name is Amanda McBroom. She is a Grammy nominee, an Emmy nominee, and a Golden Globe Award winner. Among the things that she has done is writing an off-Broadway musical called A Woman of Will. She contributed a song to My Name is Alice, and I guess we all know her from, of course, the song that she wrote, The Rose, which was in the movie The Rose. There's even a version on this new CD. So without further ado, a woman whose songs have been recorded by everyone from Harry Belafonte and Barbara Cook to the great Alvin and the Chipmunks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Amanda McBroom. Shalom!
Shalom, Rabbi.
Oh, I love that laugh. That's a good, hearty, throaty laugh. Oh, Ms. McBroom is long married to another singer. His name is George Ball, and we had a ball talking to him about a year or two ago. How's your husband doing?
He's doing great, thank you so much. He asked me, please, to give you his best regards when he found out I was going to be talking to you. He said, the Rabbi, I love him. So I'm telling you, my husband loves you and had such a good time talking to you.
So let me ask, if your husband loves me so much, how come he hasn't contacted me to convert?
You know what? You'd have to ask him. I'm just doing the paperwork. I'm the secretary here.
Now, with a name like McBroom, you are obviously not a Jewess. But are you Irish? What is your background? Are you Catholic Irish? Is that the thing?
No, I'm a lapsed Burbank Methodist.
Oh. You know what? What is a Methodist? Do they actually have a method by which they pray? What does that even mean? I do not know.
I have no idea. I know that I had to go to Sunday school, and I remember being totally confused by it at the time. And at a certain point, I just said, this is not the fairy tale that I'm going to ascribe to, and I went on my merry way.
Fair enough, but let me ask, did you find your religion in art and music?
I would have to say between music and nature. That's the two churches, the two temples that I worship at.
So how do you worship at nature? Do you go out of town every couple of weeks and go to a spiritual clearing, or do you plant tomato plants?
I have an astounding garden that I've sort of built from scratch over the past 25 years or so, and being in the trees is like being in a cathedral for me. So when we get to go out in the country, yes, I will go stand in a forest or stand by the ocean for as long as possible, because that to me is church. Or listening to something brilliantly musical. That to me is also church.
Well, we'll call it synagogue. Just
Synagogue, you got it.
Yeah, okay. Now, if we want to feel spiritual, we listen to you singing, your beautiful voice. When did you realize that you could sing?
I've been singing since I was 3 years old.
I should say, singing well.
Singing well since I was 5.
Oh.
Yeah, I would say it started early, and I was always encouraged by my parents, both of whom were in the arts, darling, in the arts. It's just been a logical other form of language for me.
Actually, I'm curious now. It's not like you're an accountant, married a lawyer kind of thing. So what do your parents do? Are they still with you, by the way? Are they still?
They are not, bless their sweethearts. They are still in my heart forever and forever. My father was a movie star, and my mother was a drama teacher.
But what was your dad?
I call him a BB+++ movie star. He was his most successful career was in the 40s and the early 50s, and he was like the second in command to Errol Flynn in most of his films, and he was the first guy to ever get killed in any Gary Cooper war movie, and he was Deanna Durbin's leading man in most of her films. His name was David Bruce.
Was his real name McBroom, and he changed it?
Yes. Oh, yes. They said to him, this was back in the time when they were naming people like Tab Hunter and Rock Hudson, and they said, Andrew McBroom is not going to cut it.
Yeah, no, my original name was McBroom, and they changed it because it was too Jewish.
Well, definitely ethnic.
So, did you ever get to go on set with your dad or meet any famous stars in your youth?
Yes, I did. By the time that I was born, he had sort of transitioned from film to television. He was the very first father in a TV sitcom way back. This is early 50s in a series called The Beulah Show, starring Hattie McDaniel.
Hattie McDaniel, wow.
Yeah. And it was a family situation, and she was the maid, and my dad was the first dad in a sitcom.
Whoa.
Long ago. So I would be there, and he did a lot of, Johnny Weissmuller had a series called The Jungle Gym, and The Lone Ranger, and The Cisco Kid, and all those things from way long ago in the 50s. But he used to bring me to the set all the time, which was really cool.
So when you were growing up in school, like elementary school, was your dad well known enough that the kids knew him, or could you be anonymous and just say, my dad works in TV and movies?
That's it. Plan B, yeah. He was never huge. With the adults, he was big, but the kids had no idea. It was a pleasant anonymity, because I could say, I'm going over to Warner Brothers today to hang with my dad, but they weren't really sure who my dad was, so it was very cool.
He worked steadily, so I guess he put together a good living for you and the family, so he was able to encourage you rather than some of these people who say, oh God, if you can think of any other career, don't go into the arts. But he wasn't.
Neither one of them ever said that to me. And, sometimes the business was good to him, and sometimes it was not good to him. But he was an actor to his roots, and my mother had been an actress when they met, and she decided there should only be one of them in the family because someone needed to make a living. So she went into teaching speech and drama and was really good at it.
Oh, so did she help you when you started to audition and do things and give you advice?
You know what? I lost her too early for that, but she helped me a whole lot when I was growing up, learning how to stand on the stage and how to speak, and she always made the costumes, and my dad always made the makeup. I was involved in there was a fabulous children's theater in Burbank called the North Hollywood Children's Theater, and I was there. John Ritter was there when he was a little kid. A whole bunch of families, children of celebs went to this funny little community theater for kids. So my mom was very much involved in helping make everybody's costumes, and my dad made everybody's makeup. It was really fun.
So you went to this children's community theater, and then towards high school and college, did you get heavily involved in theater at that point too?
I had to move to Texas when I was 13, which was a bit of a shift.
Wait. Why?
My mother died, and my dad sort of fell apart when she died, and so I got sent to Texas to hang with my mother's family, who was from South Texas. So my high school and college years were spent on the Mexican border, which was really an interesting shift. God bless it, because it gave me a look at life outside of Hollywood. And like I said, I moved from hip and trendy Hollywood back 20 years to the Mexican border. So all of a sudden, I was back in the early 50s again. I learned what it's like to not live in California, which is a very healthy lesson to learn.
Were you able to sort of hop over the border back then? There wasn't a wall back then. On certain weekends, could you cross the border, or did you just look across it?
Oh, you got your teeth done across the border. You got your hair done for $2 across the border. The great places to go eat and drink. The drinking age was 12. So, all of us, when we were like 13 or 14, we'd go across the border to have a really nice time and come home. It was easy peasy. It could not have been nicer.
I mean, there is some art and culture in Texas, but what did you study in college and high school?
Oh, I have to tell you, Texas had one of the best, all of the school system in Texas had probably one of the best arts situations in the country. They promoted music and choir and band and orchestra and one-act plays. You got a really well-rounded education in the arts. And then I went to the University of Texas, which had one of the best theater departments in the country when I was there. So I got a little foundation. Yes, I did.
You get your degree, and you've got the training. What was the next step for you?
Next step for me was the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon.
Of course, yeah.
I went there because they were just starting to do musicals, and they knew I could sing. So I went there to start doing musicals, and I eventually wound up on the main stage doing Shakespeare for them, which was really a nice thing. It's beautiful, Oregon, beautiful.
What shows were you, you did obviously a Shakespeare, so what musicals did you do when you were at OSF?
They were all new musicals, which was really, there was the Fantastics,
Right.
But there was a musical based on She Stoops to Conquer, and there was a musical called Lock Up Your Daughters, all of them based on early comedies from like the 18th century and the 19th century in England.
Huh. Did any of them go on to a longer life or hit New York?
No!
Okay, man,
Never mind.
But how did you, Amanda McBroom, go off to hit New York and further things?
Well, I was taking a break from the Shakespeare Festival for a couple of weeks, and I went down to San Francisco to hang with my mentor, who was living there, teaching at Stanford, and she said, there's this musical called Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris, and it's just opened at the Marines Memorial Theater in San Francisco. You want to go? And I said, sure. Who's Jacques Brel? She said, I don't know. I think he's French. So we went down to see this show, and I remember very clearly sitting like fourth row center, me and my friend, and these two men and these two women walked out on stage and started to sing, and my hair caught fire. It was the most amazing theatrical experience I'd never heard music like this. It was smart, it was sexy, it was political, it was romantic, it was French, very French.
No, wait, it was Belgian, wasn't it?
He was Belgian, yeah, but he wrote most of his big hits in French. A few in Flemish, but most in French.
Yeah.
It was like
everything I sing is Flemish because my throat is full of phlegm.
Me too, darling. I am the queen of phlegm.
Oh, good to know.
But the leading man was George Ball.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and I heard him sing. I said to my girlfriend, oh, my God, I want to crawl down this man's throat right now.
I'm not going to joke there, but okay, fine, good. So did you start dating immediately after, or was it one of those things you were years later?
No, it happened pretty quick, because within a couple of weeks, they were auditioning. I saw an ad in the Billboard magazine, I think it was, that they wanted to replace one of the women in the show, and my girlfriend said, you have got to audition. So I grabbed my little guitar, and I went and walked out and sat down on a stool and sang the Frenchest song I knew, which was Blowing in the Wind. And I sang Blowing in the Wind, and I got the job.
Wait, did you sing it in French or in English?
9. I know. Somehow they decided it was okay.
Oh.
And I got the job and met him and started working with. We've been together since 1969.
Wait, so that means in 2 years it's going to be your 50th wedding anniversary?
Yes.
You know what you're going to do? Anything special planned?
Oh, it's something with a really good wine involved.
Are you an alcoholic by any chance? Borderline,
I'd say, honey.
I was wondering, because with the Mexico thing and,
oh, yeah. I've never met a bottle of good wine I didn't like.
Whoa, okay, fair enough. So by the way, again, Mazel Tov on so many years with this actor partner of yours. So, and then you did Brel in San Francisco. You did it later in New York, though.
Yes. Then we went back to New York, and then we went and did it in Holland for a year, and then we came back, and they said, there's a national tour going to L.A., and I hadn't been home to California since I was 15 years old, and we flew out to L.A., and as we were sort of getting off the plane and walking around, I'm saying, I remember trees, I remember mountains, and look, here's an orchard, and look, here's the ocean, and I don't want to go back. And George said, I kind of like it too. So we decided that we wanted to stay in L.A., so we did.
Well, now what year was that? When was that?
That would be 1972, 73, something like that.
Well, wait a minute, because I was going to ask that you do have a Broadway credit. You were in 19...
Oh, yes, and I went back and I did the Seesaw. Yes, that was my Broadway debut.
Now, let me explain to people, when she says that she did Seesaw, people in that show included Tommy Tune, Anita Morris, Wayne Salento, who went on to become more of a choreographer kind of a guy, Giancarlo Esposito, who probably was like 4 years old at that point.
He was 10.
He was 10. Oh, okay, well, he really was a kid. Michelle Lee and the late Ken Howard. So, any memories?
Oh my God!
Not to mention it was directed by Michael
Many memories. It was it was originally when I got cast. The star of the show was Lainey Kazan, and we went out of town to Detroit in the winter to the Fisher Theater, which is what you did back then. You went out of town. You didn't just slam immediately into New York, and it just. Things were not working the way they were. I was terribly happy, but somebody was not happy. So all of a sudden, one day, we all get called up on stage, and they say, there's going to be a change. We're changing directors, we're changing choreographers, we're adding another writer, and we're firing half the cast.
And they fired Lainey Kazan. And let me tell you something. When I was growing up, in my bedroom, posters everywhere of Lainey Kazan and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Not together, different posters, but so this is killing me right here.
I have to tell you, Lainey Kazan was brilliant in this musical, but there Michael Bennett was the choreographer, and they decided that she couldn't dance well enough. I don't know what the story was, but one day we all stood on stage, and the back doors of the theater opened, and these men in black came walking down the aisle, and one of them was Michael Bennett, and one of them was Tommy Toon, who became the choreographer, and one of them was what was his name? Tommy Walsh, who was the assistant choreographer, and the girl that was standing next to me said, "Oh boy, here comes the pogrom." I am so fired. I can't dance. I am so fired. And they didn't fire me. Why they didn't fire me, I do not know. But I wound up staying with the show and going into New York with it. And I was the first person to leave the show because at a certain point in the rewrites, they decided that my role should be replaced by a Neil Simon monologue. So I was, at one point, Ken Howard's wife with some nice scenes and a song, and the next thing I know, I'm in the chorus with 24 wigs and some tap shoes. And I just said, this is not what I want to do with my life. So I was the first one to leave and come back out to California and do Brel.
Wow, yeah, because, a lot of demotion sucks, but at the same time, other actors who aren't famous or in your position at that point might say, look, at least it's a job, at least I'm getting paid.
Absolutely. No. I'm not saying I didn't have the grit. I don't know, one way I could say is I didn't have the grit to stick it out, but I knew that I didn't want to be in the chorus. And Brel just spoke to my heart. So when the offer came to come and do another production of Brel, I went with it.
Now,
possibly could.
Sure, but before we leave Seesaw, though.
Yeah.
There's a story that you've told, and probably told it 100 times, but tell it again when Dorothy Fields.
All right.
Yeah, tell it.
That was her last show. Before, when you stop and think about Dorothy Fields, who had her first hit in 1928 with "I Can't Give You Anything But Love, Baby," and then her last hit in 1971 or 2 with "Seesaw," and was this astounding female force in this really good old boy business.
Yeah.
By the time I met her, she was quite old and quite tiny, and we were in Detroit, and missing my boyfriend hideously, which was George.
Right.
And I was sitting in the auditorium one day and embroidering his blue jeans, because that's what we did for our boyfriends in the 70s, and sort of snuggling into my blue jeans, and Miss Fields came walking down the aisle, and she looked at me. She stopped and she looked at me, and she put down this enormous Louis Vuitton bag that she carried with her everywhere, and she said, "What's the matter, honey?" in her funny little New York voice. And I said, "Oh, Miss Fields, he's in New York and I'm in Detroit," and I was very sad. And she said, "Just a minute, honey." And she reached out into her Louis Vuitton bag and pulled out a pack of Camels and lit one up, and then she reached into her bag and pulled out a flask and took a hit, because it was 10 o'clock in the morning, which was her time to start.
It could have been Maalox, for all we know.
Could have been Maalox, but I doubt it. And then she reached into her bag and she pulled out a checkbook, and she wrote me a check for $500, and she put it in my hands and said, "You get him here. Romance is important."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is a sweet thing. That is a...
I hold her so high in my heart.
I can't blame you. By the way, we're talking with Amanda McBroom, whom we're holding high in our hearts right now, because she's telling us the story of her life and how she got from point A to point B to point D to point mid-1970s. You're doing Jacques Brel, but at the same time you're starting to write songs?
As a hobby only. It was just something to do. I had played guitar and been a folk singer since I was like maybe 14, and would travel around singing old Joan Baez hits and pretending I was Judy Collins. And I just started writing as a kind of just a hobby. And one day George, he said to me, "This is a really good song." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you need to do more of this." So I just sort of piddled around with it and kept it in my closet, and until one day, the girl who, I call her my sister wife now, Michelle Browerman, who is my favorite co-writer on stuff, she just said, "You got to get up on stage and sing these songs." And so she helped me put together a little act, a little rock and roll act, and I put on some spandex and a hot red corset and would go sing at a place called the Blah Blah Cafe, which was in Studio City, and every once in a while I would sneak in one of my own songs, and everybody seemed to like my own songs, so I started doing more and more of my own songs and less Bonnie Raitt and whoever else I could think of, and those were the ones that people seemed to respond to. So I was very happy with this little hobby on the side of being like a little rock and roll singer. And then the Rose happened and changed everything forever.
No, okay, don't just glom over that. Don't even glom over the bit about the spandex and the corset, because that's what I wear when I give my sermons on Saturday morning. But you know...
You're so popular, yes.
And also it keeps my gut in. So, one of the songs that you happened to write was called The Rose. First of all, do you remember what sparked that? I mean, were you in your garden at that point? And
oh, no. Actually, I was driving down the freeway, the Ventura Freeway, and this wonderful song came on the radio called Magdalena that had been written by a guy named Danny O'Keefe. And do you remember a guy named Leo Sayer?
Oh, sure. When I Need You.
That's the one. Well, this was a song that he cut, and I was listening to it on the road, and there was a great line in it that said, "Your love is like a razor. Love is like a razor, my heart is just a scar."
Ooh.
And I just thought, oh, that's one of the sexiest lines I've ever heard. And
that's one of the sexiest lines you've ever heard. My God, what do you read, 50 Shades of Grey every night?
No. But I kept thinking, I don't think love is like a razor. What do I think love is? And it was as if somebody had opened up the top of my head, and these words just started pouring in to my head, and I drove home as fast as I safely could and ran past George, who I think was watching football in the other room, and sat down at my piano, and 15 minutes later, there it was. And I played it. I said, I want to play this for you. I don't know what this is, because I always played my new songs for him. And
yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "You just wrote a standard." And I said, don't be silly. Nobody's ever going to hear this but you and me and maybe somebody at a Christmas party. And he said, no. Mark my words. Something is going to happen to this song. And he was right.
Now, here's the deal. How did you go? I mean, yes, you were performing your songs and doing it at this club, but you've got a song, maybe a couple of hundred people hear it. How does it go from you to becoming an actual standard that millions of people have heard of and dozens of famous people have recorded?
Her name is Michelle Browerman, my writing partner. She was a professional songwriter, and she said to me at one point, she said, honey, you've got this song called The Rose, and there's this movie that they're working on right now in town called The Rose, and do you want me to, I'm going to send them a couple of my songs. Do you want me to send them one of yours? And I said, sure. So I handed her this little El Chizo cassette on which I had recorded The Rose, and she sent it submitted it in with hers, and they threw it in the reject shoebox because it wasn't rock and roll, and they just thought, oh, no, this won't do. But the music supervisor was a lovely man named Paul Rothschild, who had been Janis Joplin's music director.
Wasn't he with Elektra Records for many years?
He sure was.
Wow.
Sure was. And he heard it, and he said, wait a minute. And he grabbed it and sent it to Bette, and she liked it, and that's how it got in the film.
And it became, as we know, thanks to Bette Midler, a standard. Has she recorded? She must have recorded more of your songs too over the years.
Nope, that's it.
Whoa.
Yeah, now that was the only one. And I always say to George, me and my friend Julie Gold, who wrote From a Distance, I said, we are members of the Bette Midler Changed My Life Club. And George says, no. Bette Midler isn't a member of the Amanda McBroom and Julie Gold Changed My Life Club. And I said, that's a wash. I accept it.
Obviously, The Rose was a life changer for you.
Yes.
You've got to love the song. And every time you perform, I guess it's sort of expected that you do the song. Do you have mixed feelings about it, though? Having written dozens and dozens of other songs, do you like, oh, God, they're going to want the fucking Rose again? Or are you like, oh, great, they want to hear the Rose?
Oh, good, they want to hear the Rose. Oh, good, I get to sing this again. Oh, good, if I'm lucky, they'll sing along, which they do. It's one of the miracles of my life. You want to talk about it, a church experience. I have deep in my heart. This is going to sound really schmaltzy, but I've always had one of my prayers to the universe has been, can I do something good for people on the planet? And the song seems to be a mitzvah for people.
Ooh. I love that. But again, as an artist to some extent myself, are there things like you wonder, hey, there are 5 other songs that I've written, at least, that are as good or better than, in my opinion, The Rose. How do I make those standards? Do you ever get that sort of frustration of like,
of course, only knew? Of course.
Yeah.
And, sometimes they get discovered and sometimes they make it to the world, and the rest of the time I'm out there offering them to the world by making CDs and doing concerts and hoping somebody else will fall in love with one and want to do it.
Can I ask what some of your favorite covers of your songs by other people would be?
Oh, sure. Well, Barbara Cook's version of my song about my father called Errol Flynn. That's a beauty. And I would say Judy Collins cut a song of mine called Dreaming and did a beautiful job of that. There's an English boy group called Westlife that did a version of The Rose that made me incredibly happy. But maybe my favorite one, which has never even been officially recorded, I don't know if you remember, it was a YouTube sensation a couple of years ago. It was from something called like Britain's Got Talent or whatever, one of those singing competitions. And this young construction worker who was terrified out of his mind stood up and sang The Rose and blew the roof off the place and said that it had been the song that he sang it for his grandmother. And I think that's my favorite performance of it that I've ever heard.
Wow.
It was wonderful.
We're talking with Amanda McBroom, who is absolutely wonderful, talking about her life, her career, her music. Now, we should get, of course, to your new album. It's called Voices from LML Music. Is that part Gecko, too, which is your own label?
Yep, yes. Gecko and LML take each other out to dinner all the time.
Oh, good. I hope they pick a fancy restaurant, because
I hope so, too.
You're entitled.
And I love the fact that you called it an album. You're dating yourself, darling.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. I have dated myself sometimes. I've taken myself out for dinner and then abused myself later. But, now I forgot what I was going to ask.
Oh, we were talking about albums.
Yeah, well, the decision in 2017 to release a CD with a cover, with an actual disc, as opposed to going straight to the format that people listen to now, which is just iTunes and
streaming. Yeah.
Why did you choose to do a hard copy thingy?
Because I love CDs. I love having something physical in my hand with art that I can look at. And a great many of my followers are my age, and they much prefer CDs to streaming. And I think the sound is better when it's really well. This new CD Voices is. The sound is glorious. It was beautifully engineered and mastered. And coming out of your car radio, via Sirius or whatever like that, it doesn't give you the same richness that if you have a decent sound system and a good CD player, you can get. My dream right now is to go back and cut some of it as vinyl, because my very first recordings that I ever did were direct-to-disc albums back in 1980, which I recorded on the soundstage at MGM. And the sound quality is astounding.
Now, I read somewhere that in doing that, you had to do all the songs in like a half hour without stopping, without any editing, without any whatever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's so cool. You stand in the middle of the orchestra. I had this glorious orchestra. And you do the entire CD, the entire side of this was LP time, the entire side without stopping. And you do like 5 or 6 takes, and they pick the most perfect take, and after that they can only stamp like 100,000, and then they have to go to the second most perfect take, and then they'll stamp those, and the recording quality is amazing. And the way I wound up having a career at all is that all these fancy speaker companies liked the sound of my voice to illustrate their speakers. So I got a nickname. They used to call me Our Lady of the High End. Thank you very much. Obviously, this is long ago. The end is not so high anymore. But nonetheless, the sound was beautiful. So I prefer really good sound. And then, of course, today, with the streaming gives you many more people around the world an opportunity to hear what you do, but nobody gets paid.
Oh, well, I would figure, that's right, you make a CD at least when you do concerts, if you come out afterwards,
Exactly.
you sign
Exactly.
And speaking
I'm happy to hand people, let people want to take an actual concrete evidence of what they just heard home with them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fabulous thing, and you can't do that with it. You cannot sign an MP3 file.
No, you cannot.
Seriously, it's true. And you mentioned, since we're talking about getting paid, you don't even really have to get paid for this CD because you raised the money to make it in the first place.
That's right. That's right. I just decided that I got very brave this time. I did a Kickstarter. I had never done that in my life, and it was fascinating and scary. And I just said, "Honey, you're too old to say I'm afraid of this. Let's see what a Kickstarter is all about." And so we raised all the funds we asked for, plus some, and it was an astounding. I said I woke up every day during this process in gratitude because of the people that. I had no expectations of anybody wanting to be a part of the Kickstarter, and so many people responded with so much love and support. It was just remarkable.
And also, to be honest, when cabaret people tend to do CDs, nice as they are, it's generally them and a piano. So you're raising X amount of money, you put the thing out, and boom. Whereas you've got, like, a lot of musicians on here. There's a whole orchestra.
I went down to Nashville. The producer who called me up, who's been a friend of mine and produced an earlier CD on me, he bothers me every 2 years saying, "When are we going to do another CD? When are we going to?" And he finally just said, "You got to do it. You got to do it now while you still can sing." And his name is Fred Mullen, and he's Jimmy Webb's producer and Vince Gill's producer. All these major artists. He says, "You'll come to Nashville. We'll do it in 10 days. They're the best musicians on the planet in Nashville. I can get them for you wholesale. Let's do it." So I just said, "Okay, let's go down." And oh my goodness, wait till you hear. The musicianship is astounding.
And it's on this CD by Amanda McBroom called Voices. It's just out from Gecko and LML Music, and they can get it, by the way, via your website, amcbroom.com, A-M-C-B-R-O-O-M, sort of like the implement.
Like you sweep with.
What?
McBroom. You sweep with a broom.
Oh, you sweep with. You were asking me who I slept with, which is...
No, I did not ask you that. Although I will if you want me to.
Oh, that's another conversation. Now, speaking of other things with Amanda McBroom, and speaking of music, now we can kind of guess the sort of, or think we can guess, the sort of music that you like and that you listen to, and it's American standards with maybe a hint of pop on the radio. But would stuff surprise us in terms of what might be on your CD player, on your iPod?
Might be.
Such as?
Yeah. I'm. The top of my list is Warren Zevon and the Eagles.
That is a little. I mean, California, I get it, but Zevon, that's interesting.
Warren. Well, I'm a word queen. I love a great lyric, and Warren Zevon wrote some of the best lyrics on the planet. I love my Springsteen. I love my Bonnie Raitt for the blues. I love anything that's coming out of New Orleans, like the Meters. I love the old tunes by Lieber and Stoller.
Oh well, yes, yeah, sure.
Hilarious, funny, contemporary. I'd say I love guys like the Fountains of Wayne and Fleet Foxes. I just love somebody who can tell a really good story musically.
Whoa! Well, I have to say, I'm very impressed in your musical taste there. I'm just saying, okay. Now, again, we're going to switch gears quite a bit.
Good.
Just go back to an acting thing for a moment, because we've got to ask you, like everybody's going to ask you, because if people don't know you from the Rose, they know that you were on Star Trek a couple of times.
Yes, they do.
What can I tell you? So, what was the strangest, oddest moment that you had appearing on Star Trek The Next Generation?
I think it was watching Patrick Stewart drop a rubber tarantula down the back of Jonathan Freck's neck.
I assume this was not part of the show.
No,
like
this was backstage. Those people were so silly. It was the most happy and silly company, and all any of them wanted to do was sing. Patrick Stewart wanted to be a country singer, and they would sing all the time, and I said, well, who's going to write the show about the talent show on the Enterprise?
Ooh.
Because that would have been such a great idea, because everybody on there could sing and dance and tell a joke, and I just thought it was, nobody listened to me, but I still think it was a wonderful idea.
Actually, they ended up, it was funny, I was flipping the dials, and they did that on another one of the Star Treks. The one where the woman is the pilot. I forget her name.
Oh, Kate Mulgrew?
Kate Mulgrew, yeah. The episode started with them at a talent show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then they go into a time loop and they keep reliving it. So
oh, no.
So it's like Star Trek meets Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day in space, dear God.
Yeah. So I'm just letting you know, they took the story eventually, and so somebody owes you 15%. I don't know.
That's right.
Now, let me ask, are you, now that this CD is out, are you working on another CD?
I have a list. For now, I am just getting this baby out into the world and promoting her. I do have a list for another CD. Mostly, I'm doing a lot of concert work, and Michelle, my writing partner, and I are working on the beginnings of a new musical, because we've written both musicals together, and just seeing where the ducks will fly.
How often? Now, do you have a set schedule when you work with Michelle Browerman on stuff? Do you meet like 2 hours every day or a couple?
No. We're much too. She's disciplined. I am not. It's funny you should say that, because just yesterday we made a pact that we're going to meet every 2 weeks and just write stuff. But usually what happens is a lyric will come to me, or a title will come to her, and we'll call each other up and say, "Honey, do you think this is a song?" "Sure, okay." And then within a day or two, it's done. But it's on impulse, it's not on discipline, which is a shameful way to work, but it's just the way it is.
But do you work separately on the stuff, or do you physically get together at the piano?
We start out separately, because she lives 2 hours from me. She lives down in Venice, and I live up near Santa Barbara. And then...
she lives in Venice. She has to get on a plane. She has to go through the Duomo and everything.
Not at Venice. Not that Venice. The Venice near Culver City, for God's sake.
All right, okay.
And so then I'll drive down to her, and we'll sit down at her piano and clean it up.
So, I guess, is there not such a thing with you guys as the lyric first or the music first?
No.
No.
It's usually story first, but one or the other of us will start it. We've been writing. One of our favorite things to do. We've written the music for 14 animated features for singing baby dinosaurs. She's the one that wrote the song for the Chipmunks with me. And so when we're not writing just for ourselves, we have a tendency to be writing for people under the age of 10, which is so much fun.
So wait. I know you've done a lot of animated features, but are you saying literally 14 feature films, all of them about baby dinosaurs?
Yes, the franchise for The Land Before Time continues to go on, and there are 16 of them, and we've written 14 of the 16. And then we did write all the music for the Chipmunks, Meet Frankenstein.
One of my favorites.
Absolutely. Well, I have to tell you, I went to see an agent not too long ago, and he was looking at my resume, and he looked at me and he said, "Did you write big water?" And I said, "Do you have a 5-year-old?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, I did."
And the agent threw you out of the room because
exactly. We did not work together, but it was a moment.
No, there was also one of the animated films was apparently drawn by an animator on Ren and Stimpy.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, you mentioned that in some interview or something, that it was going to be like this typical 5 to 10-year-old children's animated film, and then it just got a little bit weirder because the animator wasn't going to go there.
Oh, right, yes, okay.
Which one was that? Was it Alaska's or Eskimo? Something weird.
Was it Balto? It could have been the Balto, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about that one. Anyway, It has been delightful and fun, and we're talking with Amanda McBroom. Remember, you can get her new album, Voices, from Gecko LML Music, either in all your usual musical places or her website, amcbroom.com. Now, we started this talking about wishing you an almost mazel tov on your 50th anniversary coming up in a year and a half. You're also turned 70 years old. How's that?
I am about to do that.
You're about to do that, yeah. So, any thoughts on that? Did you feel any different from when you were 40? Or not?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel wiser. I also feel lazier. It's more of a fight every morning to get up and say, rather than sit down and read the paper, I think I'll go be creative. I think that one of the challenges of becoming older is keeping your energy and your interest alive and not settling. I've decided that for my 70th birthday, I am going to get a tattoo.
Painful. Yeah. What would you get? A rose? Don't tell me it's a rose.
No, well, it could be, but somebody sent me a beautiful little illustration of a musical treble clef with a bird on top of it singing, and I love birds, so that could be it. And maybe the bird will be holding a rose in its teeth. Who knows?
I'm just curious, have you decided where physically you would put this?
Someplace where nobody can see it, probably my upper arm, because nobody's going to see, aside from George, is ever going to see my upper arms again. I remember, I'm almost 70.
Well, yeah, fair enough. So basically, and what's nice is that you can sprinkle the bird with morning dew every time you use deodorant.
I'm not putting it in my armpit. Oh, no. Ow. No, but I can at least wash it every day.
Oh, that's true. Good point. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been having the honor and the pleasure talking to Amanda McBroom, and we wish her much more music, more collaborations, and great health going forward. Amanda McBroom, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, my friend. I so appreciate talking to you.
Shalom.
Shalom.